Hey y'all, I've got a great project to share with you today. I'm going to show you how I make these beautiful cheese boards. Now these make excellent gifts. I've made a couple of hundred of them and they always go very quickly, especially here around the holidays. And these are so quick and easy to make, it's easy to batch out and make a bunch of them all at once. I usually make a few dozen at a time. So I recommend if you're going to make one, make several, because as soon as people see them, you're going to get requests. So let's get started and I'll show you how I make them. I have this beautiful bird's eye maple left over from another project. It's going to pair really well with some jatoba. Both boards are 3/4 of an inch thick, which is perfect for our cheese board. Our cheese board is going to be 5 3/4 of an inch wide, so I'll rip down the maple to 2 1/4 inches. Now I'll move the fence over to 1 1/4 inches and rip down the jatoba. Over at the miter saw, I trimmed the pieces down to 10 inches, leaving them a little bit long so that after they glue up, I can trim them all flush. And it's a good thing I do too, because someone forgot to reset the miter saw. Alright, let me take a time out for a quick tip. Whenever you use your miter saw to make some small angles, make sure you set it back to 0 before you use it again. I assume my miter saw was set at 0 degrees like it typically is, but I made some cuts the other day at a 2-degree angle and forgot to set it back to 0. So now all of my parts have a 2-degree cut on the end of them. It's not really a big deal. I left the parts a little bit long so I can cut them flush later on after I do the glue up, but it's a little bit annoying and just something you need to watch out for. Hey, we all make mistakes. Just learn from it and move on. Now it's time to glue up our boards. Spread an even coat of glue on each board and apply even clamping pressure. Make sure you don't over clamp because you can squeeze out the glue and create a weak joint. So after the glue is dried for a couple of hours, or let's be honest, in my case a couple of days, we can take them out of the clamps and start running them through the planer to clean up the glue line. Now we'll take our parts back to the miter saw and make absolutely sure this time that we are set to 0. Here I'll square up the end and cut the boards to a final length of 9.5 inches. And if you don't have a miter saw, you can square them up at the table saw using a miter gauge or a sled. At the router table, I'll set up a 1/4 inch round over bit so that I can round over the top side of each of the boards. Now I need to mark where to drill the hole for the handle. On one end of the board, I mark 3/4 of an inch from the end and 3/8 from the bottom. Over at the drill press, I have a jig made of 2 boards that are glued together at 90 degrees. I use this as a reference surface for my cheese board so that I can get it perfectly aligned with the bit. I need to make a 1/4 inch hole 3.5 inches deep in each board. And because my drill press is so small, I actually have to finish these off by hand to get the full 3.5 inches deep. Now it's time to make the slot for the cheese cutting wire. But first we'll need to change out our table saw blade for a rip blade with a flat tooth grind. On my crosscut sled, I set a stop block 3 inches from the blade. Now use a small scrap about a 1/2 inch square up against the fence of the sled. This will raise the front of the cheese board so I can cut at an angle. Now raise the table saw blade so that it cuts completely through the hole, but not through the bottom of the board. Now we'll sand the board starting at 150 grit and go all the way up through 220 grit. And don't forget about sanding down the edges and smoothing out the roundovers. You can do this by hand, but I've made a cradle from my random orbit sander that makes this much easier. I like for my cheese boards to have a little something extra, so I use this corner block to make some pilot holes so that I can attach some rubber feet. And now for my favorite part, adding the finish and seeing the wood come to life. I'm using Biscuit Trees board butter, which is my own blend of mineral oil and beeswax. I just dab some on with a paper towel and let it sit for about an hour to let the oil absorb into the wood. I'll leave a link in the description if you'd like to get some of this for yourself. After it's had a little time to dry, you just buff out the wax with a clean cloth. And now it's time to add the hardware. We'll start with the rubber feet by screwing them into the holes we drilled earlier. The long end of the handle goes into the hole that we drilled and through the loop in the wire. Now attach the handle to the other side of the rod, flip it up, and use the included screw to hold it in place. I have links in the description for the hardware I'm using as well as the rubber feet.
Now, just like with cutting boards, there's basically an infinite number of variations you can come up with when you're building these on your own. Just using different types of wood, you can get different colorations, different patterns. Here's a few examples of some that I've done recently, just to give you some more ideas. I hope you enjoyed this video today. Go out, build you some of these cheese boards. They're a really great project, really fun. And again, they make awesome gifts. We've got the holidays coming up, so build a bunch of these for your friends and family. And I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. That's really good cheese.